Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thank you for joining us for another session of our Chat for Parents series entitled Just Had a Baby, Ways to Connect and Communicate as New Parents. This program is brought to you by the Partnership's Perinatal Mood Disorder Initiative, which is funded via grant by the New Jersey Department of Health. My name is Evie Gonzalez, and I am a perinatal mental health coordinator at the Partnership for Maternal and Child Health of Northern New Jersey. For those of you who are unaware of our organization, we are a nonprofit committed to improving the health of women, children, and families. I encourage you to visit our website at www.partnershipmch.org to learn more about the different programs that the partnership provides and see which ones are available in the areas you work and live in. At the conclusion of this Q&A, I will talk a little bit more about our perinatal mood disorders program. In today's discussion, we will be talking with Linda Klempner, who I have had the pleasure of working with for several years now, about how to set boundaries, the importance of having a postpartum plan, and the importance of taking time to nurture your relationship with your partner. So just a little background information on Linda. She's a licensed psychologist in New York and New Jersey, began women's health counseling and psychotherapy in Teaneck over 30 years ago. Having served on the board of Depression After Delivery and Postpartum Support International, she is currently Postpartum Support International Advisory Council Chair. She is the co-founder of Postpartum Support International's New Jersey chapter. She currently serves as the vice president of the New Jersey chapter and is on the Partnership for Maternal and Child Health of New Jersey's Regional Education Committee. Dr. Klempner has written, taught, and appeared on television regarding women's reproductive health issues and maternal mental health, and has served on the faculty of several postgraduate psychoanalytic institutes. And last but not least, she is a winner of the Stars of Resolve Award. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here.
Hi, Evie. Pleasure.
So we all know that transitioning into parenthood is extremely challenging, whether it's your first child, your second child, your third child. And a lot of times that transition into parenthood comes with a lack of knowledge of not knowing how much it's going to impact the relationship between you and your partner. So Linda and I have some questions that we are going to answer, and we also have an opportunity for you to be able, who are watching, to write in the chat box any questions that you may have in regards to the topic that we're covering today. And we will be leaving time at the end to be able to answer as many questions as possible. So let's get started. Okay, so Linda, when it comes to the transition of being a parent, right? I do feel, based on, work that I've done with my moms, and I'm sure you have too, is that it's always good to have some sort of plan to come up with during your pregnancy in terms of, what are the conversations that you should be having to transition into parenthood? So what would you say would the postpartum plan look like that you and your partner can discuss when it comes into transitioning into parenthood? And what are the types of conversations that you and your partner should be having?
Well, first, Evie, what I'd say, it's a funny thing because, most obstetricians are going to suggest that someone have a birth plan. You're going to use an epidural, how do you feel about a C-section?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to pack in that bag you're going to take to the hospital? But having a perinatal birth plan isn't something that necessarily comes up, is it? And so, no. And so we're really kind of trying to enlarge the scope of the conversation and the thinking. So for lots of couples, they may not have really thought about what kind of people they are in terms of, say, for instance, type A or type B people. Mm-hmm. Because if you're a type A person who likes to fold sheets exactly like this and put them in the closet exactly like that, what you may find is that it's good to know that, because that way you won't feel guilty and disappointed when you can't get to that after the baby is born.
Mm-hmm.
Is your husband a type A, so you're both alike and you both like it that way? Or is he a type B and he likes to take it easy and go with the flow? Now, it just may be that going with the flow could be wonderful when it comes to having the baby home.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, being able to understand how you operate, that can make a big difference in terms of coming home. Who do you operate with? Do you like your mother-in-law? Fortunately, they like me. Or are you somebody who can't stand that person? Or is your mother, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, 1,000 miles away and can't get up here? That's part of the birth plan also, is how can we arrange things so that we can get as much support as possible, at least in those first 8 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
And to not feel guilty if you can't, it's not going to be a perfect arrangement.
Absolutely. So it sounds to me like these are conversations that the couple should be having when mom is pregnant, and should be discussing, who is going to come and help. What is the relationship dynamic, like you had mentioned, with in-laws, with parents? How does your partner feel about your parents maybe coming to help and all of that? And I think all that is important, absolutely, to help smooth that transition into parenthood. Because one of the things that I have noticed with, when working with my moms, is that they don't come up with a plan in terms of, who's going to be in charge of what once the baby gets here, because we all know it can't fall on the mom, right? Mom is going to get completely burnt out. So it's important to incorporate a plan with your partner to kind of figure out who's going to be responsible for what. And like you said, what type of personality do they have? Do you think it's important that when deciding who's going to be doing what, to play to each other's strengths?
Absolutely. If look, the reason you got together in the first place is because there was something, and again, I don't care whether you're married or you're together, however that works, that you coupled, assuming you're in a couple, you got together because there was something that your partner added that gave you something that you don't quite have yourself, or maybe you don't even feel like exploring yourself, however you want to look at it. Though there is something there that they have to offer. Maybe you picked them because they weren't so type A, that they could make you, help you to let down a little bit and have a little fun. But when you're postpartum, it's easy to say, well, wait a minute, if I don't do those bottles right, what could happen to my baby? Now that's where we get into a little bit of obsessive compulsive kinds of behaviors that can go along with type A personality. Type A can make you a wonderful worker. Your employer can love you because you're so good at details, you're so good at managing. But what you can discover is that when you have a newborn, and the newborn is just a mess of chaos and messiness, and nobody can really explain it to you until you've got one of those in your house, And even if you've got one before, the second one is still sort of a surprise, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so to be able to kind of revisit, what do we need to, what can we tweak just a little bit, because it may be that, and I hear it sometimes, a spouse who is accustomed to, say, playing 18 rounds of golf every weekend, every Saturday, as long as the weather is good, or goes to wash their car. So they have the same kind of habits, but just a little bit different, and often out of the house. And how does a mom feel when dad leaves and goes out of the house to do his chore, when she's there and exhausted because either the baby's not sleeping, or there's a problem, there are issues with lactation? That's where hot feelings and hurt feelings can pop up.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to look at that birth plan, being able to know yourself and know, wait a minute, what is it that perhaps I could be a little bit more flexible on? Flexibility, and so hear me, people who are out there, flexibility is the key to a long marriage. A long relationship doesn't mean that I always give in to you or you always give in to me, but it means interdependency. Not completely dependent, not completely independent, but interdependent.
Would you also say that it's important as a couple, especially once the baby gets here, to pick and choose your battles?
For sure. And one of the battles is sleep.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The first battle, as far as I'm concerned, both as a mom and as a clinician, is sleep. What we know from the research is that you need sometimes a stretch of 5 hours of sleep put together. 5 hours, not 3 and 2, but 5, to be able to feel like you are yourself, that you are not going crazy. And that's what the research shows. So the question is, how do we make that happen? Now, if I told any mom, you've got to get sleep and you've got to do this every night, they'd never come see me because they would I knew what I was talking about. But what we know is that every now and then, whether it's a nap, whether it's I don't trust my mother or my mother-in-law or my sister entirely. I don't trust my husband entirely to do it my way.
Yeah.
But I know that they want this baby to survive as much as I do. They're in love with that baby. And I can go and rest. And even if you can't sleep, even if you're laying down and you give yourself a rest, you're still going to ultimately heal from the birth process and start to feel more like yourself again.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I stress so much to moms out there is that you got to sleep or rest when the baby sleeps, because I know a lot of women are not daytime nappers, myself included. But if you're not able to nap, then it's so important that you at least rest and do something that's going to be able to decompress your body. Because if you're going, what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up getting burnt out. And we don't want that for our mommies.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing you raise is that, it's sometimes we forget that we can't keep doing all the things we used to do. Yeah. Like the laundry, like the errands, like all the things that we did, and also add in this new little adorable bundle of chaos. They don't work on our timetable. They're adorable, yes, but the timetable,
Yeah, and they're completely unpredictable.
Completely unpredictable. And so the question is how do you take your list? If you have 5 things on a list, and normally you're used to doing all 5 in one day, and then starting tomorrow with another list of 5, then how do you say to yourself, wait a minute, I've got to revise this list business. I have to put sleeping, eating, taking care of baby, taking care of myself at the top, spending some me time, even if it's in the shower, which is fine. But how do I do that and just ease off for the next couple of months? That's all. The next couple of months.
Like I always say to my moms, it's okay to give yourself a free pass during this time period, So one of the terminologies that I've been hearing a lot is productive communication. What exactly is that in reference to couples?
Well, productive communication in my book is about figuring out how, especially if we've done the birth plan and maybe we've had some hit and misses with that, but how do we rebuild goodwill? I may be angry with you because I expected you to know how to clean those bottles my way, and you're disappointing me. Yeah. Or perhaps I expected you, if I'm a dad, to want to resume intimacy, which I know we'll get to later, in a certain time frame. After all, you're feeling better. But maybe we need to look at how we rebuild goodwill so we're not angry with each other. Maybe we need to take a look at what do we have to do so that we can resume loving each other. But maybe we're not going to love each other exactly. We're going to have more grown-up love instead of that kind of passionate, wild and crazy stuff that we had before we decided to have a child or children. And so what I would like to just talk about for the next couple of minutes is something that is called the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And this was devised by a psychologist out in the West Coast called John Gottman of the Gottman Institute. And this is basic marriage, good marriage knowledge. And this is true whether you have a little baby or that baby is getting bigger. And that is, there are the four horsemen: is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Four things. Now, it should be pretty obvious what criticism looks like. Contempt, speaking contemptuously to the other one. Defensiveness is, oh yeah, well you talk that way to me too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really hearing you, am I? And stonewalling, just basically walking away. And what he found by doing research with people who hadn't gotten married yet is that the people who were going to have long marriages were the ones who did as little of these, exhibited as little of these four behaviors as possible. And that for every one of those hurts, because it hurts being told you're ridiculous, or you're making a mountain out of a molehill, or I've told you 3 million times not to put your cup over there, or to leave your shoes on the floor over there, and criticizing, that for every one of those, you need 4 corrections or 4 kindnesses. Now think about that. That's a whole lot of extra work.
It is. It is. But I can totally see how it works. And it sounds like it really just boils down to how well you communicate with each other and how you speak to each other, and having that level of respect to each other, to address each other in a polite manner.
Yes.
Instead of screaming and name calling and critiquing and all of that is what it sounds like, which is so important in any relationship.
For sure. And let's face it, some of that is just magnified when we have a baby at home.
Absolutely. So now the baby gets here. You sat down, you came up with this plan with your partner, and now the plan is broken. Neither one of you are doing what you had promised to do in this plan. How do you handle that? How does the couple handle that?
One idea is to write it down on paper.
So you're saying when they're coming up with the plan, to write it down on paper?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And that way you can revisit it, because we're not forgetting, because it's on paper. So we're going to be able to remember. Let's take a look at it. What was the date we wrote that? What do we need to revise now? Because let's just say Dad really loves to play golf, or his passion is going to get his car washed every Saturday morning. Well, that's okay, but maybe Dad can't play every Saturday morning now. Maybe Dad has to be able to be willing to forego that and help out, so that his wife can go out for 10 minutes on a Saturday morning and do something really exciting, especially during the pandemic, like take a walk around the block, or go take that shower, a longer shower instead of a quick shower with the baby, in the booster seat over there. How can we arrange to reestablish the time? How does she need to be able to say, okay, I think what I'd like you to do is to help make bottles at night. Or I think that it would really, for her to be able to say, I understand that I may be, asking, you to do something in a certain way, and I have to let go of doing it that way. But he has to be able to say, how can I help you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the important thing is that by both of them piggybacking, they're enabling each other to also have some self-care, which we can go on a whole nother tangent about that, because that's so important for moms and dads to be able to get that. Like, one of the things I always say to my moms is being a mom is just one of the roles that you play. You're still a wife, you're still a daughter, you're still a cousin, a sister, so you can't, it's very important to acknowledge those other roles as well. And, make some time for yourself and for your partner to be able to do the same. Absolutely. So when it comes to boundaries, because boundaries is a huge thing for a new mom in general, and it's even more so now a topic that's coming up, especially with the pandemic. So as a couple, how do you create and communicate boundaries when it comes to family and friends, especially during the pandemic?
Especially during the pandemic, there's no doubt that we have a challenge. I'm hearing from my moms, and you probably are too, that it's a frightening time to imagine having a baby, a newborn, get too close. And if your baby is your second or third child, and you're looking forward to your other child going to daycare or being in the company of their grandma or grandpa, so that you get a little bit of a break. One of the rules of thumb that I try to teach moms is it's the basic saying that goes, say what you mean what you say, and don't be mean.
I like that.
Thank you.
I'm going to take that from you, Linda.
I'm not sure I made it up, but I think it really would. It's really, it means you don't have to keep quiet and just be nice. It means you don't have to be nasty in the way you say it. It means you can be, essentially, it's assertiveness. It's being able to speak your mind. Now, does that always work? Is someone going to listen to you, or are they going to say, well, in my generation, that's not how I raised your wife or your husband. That's not how we did it back then. You could get brushed off. That's defensiveness. And so what do you do about that? Is you can say, well, that may be true, but right now in the year 2021, that's really not going to work over here. And I hear what you're saying, or I respect what you're saying, but for us right now, given our circumstances, we can do this, but we can't do that.
Yeah. And do you think it's important that the couple comes up with that conclusion together? Because one of the things that I have been hearing is maybe mom is having, doesn't want anybody coming to the house and is having a difficult time with wanting visitors, but then their partner is a lot more lax. So do you feel like together they need to come up with what they're both comfortable with?
That optimally, that's always the best thing.
Yeah.
Does it always happen that way? Not necessarily. I mean, I think that what there is that there's basically, especially now with the pandemic, there has to be an individual assessment of risk.
I agree. Yeah.
If I just had a C-section, for instance, and I'm really not feeling good, and I have to worry about my wound, then maybe I want to be extra careful. Maybe I'm a type A personality and my house is a mess, and I just don't want them to see that my house is a mess. But that's more true under non-pandemic circumstances, I think. But some people have large families, and in large families, some of them, again, I'm hearing, say, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. We're all fine. Even though you know that some of them they're not working from home. They're working out somewhere else. They're in contact with people who they can't necessarily, contact tracing is forget about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think, though, that, as you say, optimally, for a couple to agree, sometimes we agree to disagree, but we're still going to basically arrive at one decision. And maybe we keep, again, it's part of the birth plan. It's maybe if we've written it down, we can keep revising that.
Absolutely.
If we
Yeah.
have our 6-week checkup, if the baby's 6-week checkup, or a 3-month checkup, and the baby's doing fabulous, and you say to yourself, it's a day like yesterday when it was 50 degrees, and you can be spontaneous, because sometimes spontaneity is really what works, to be able to say to somebody, you know what, if you come over and you come to my garage, or you come to my back porch, or you're sitting in your car, I will run out with the baby, or you can come in for a couple of minutes, come see the baby.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that, at the end of the day, we want to advise our moms to do whatever it is they need to do that's going to, deter them from having so much anxiety. So, sometimes moms will say, well, my parents really want to come and visit, but I'm just not comfortable, but I'm afraid that my mom is going to get mad at me. That's something that comes up. And one of the things that I say to my moms is, at the end of the day, if just having your mom over is going to create so much anxiety in you because you're petrified of the baby getting COVID, you're not even going to be enjoying the experience of having your mom visit. So why not do it at a later time where you may feel more comfortable with having them come and visit? Same thing with in-laws. And the truth is, like what you said, they may not be happy with the response that you're giving them, but at the end of the day, you have to do with what's going to work best for you and your family. And they may be upset, but they're going to get over it, right? Like they will get over it. You have to do what's going to make you and your family the most comfortable and the least anxious in an already anxious time for new moms. So absolutely.
Can I just add to that? I mean, I think once in a blue moon, I do hear of, or they come into the office. It's a mom and her mother, or it's a mom and a mother-in-law, or it's a family that has to come in together because they didn't get over it. But usually when they don't get over it, it's because, and again, these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. If I'm having a big reaction to something that doesn't seem like it ought to be so big, what else is going on here?
Yeah, what's the underlying issue? I agree.
What's the underlying issue, exactly.
Absolutely. So we all know that the first few weeks, especially after the baby is born and you're home and it's this huge transition, it can be a very stressful time for couples. So what are some interventions that you think could be used to help get through, especially those first few weeks when baby's home?
Well, the first certainly is support. And who can come, who can help, who can stay over, or are you in a position to go sleep overnight? If you've been potting with your own family, is there somewhere that you can go if necessary, or is there someone who can come? Paternity leaves now are so much better than they used to be. Not for everyone, sadly, breaks my heart. But often, if there's a way so that a couple can get some assistance, or to be able to figure out ways to get rest, like you said before, you may not be a napper. I was never a daytime napper, but there are exceptions to every rule. And even if you can't sleep, if you're resting, especially depending on what kind of baby you have. If you have a colicky baby, you want to tear your hair out, at what point do you say, I thought I could do it all. I thought this was going to be the best moments of my life, but it's hell and I need help. Yeah. And so, and also with lactation consultants, doulas, there's so many ways. And a lot of this is free now. Some of it isn't, but some of it is much more available than it used to be.
Absolutely. And again, this just goes back to having that communication with your partner and just letting them know, I need your help. I need you to step in. And sometimes you may need to tell them exactly what it is that you need from them. and that's just so important. And again, this all goes back to what we had mentioned at the beginning, that you need to be able to have that communication with your partner. And then I want to talk a little bit about what you had mentioned about being assertive, because we know that sometimes being assertive can be very challenging for some people, but being assertive is definitely a skill that's so necessary as a mom, because you are going to be having to advocate for yourself and for your child for probably till they're, let's say, 18. All right. It's probably longer than that, but let's give it till they're 18, right? So it may be uncomfortable at first if you are someone who is not assertive. If you are someone who is not used to having those difficult conversations with your in-laws or family or your partner. But it's a good lesson for you to start doing that as early as possible, because you're going to have to be advocating for many, many years to come, whether it's with family, whether it's with friends, whether it's with the school. So it definitely is a tool that you need to kind of have in your toolkit. And at first it may seem very awkward and very uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you are going to get with being assertive. So it's so important to be able to do that, especially when it comes to, expressing how you feel with your partner. Our partners are not mind readers, so they don't necessarily know what we need from them. We want to think that it's going to come from them and they're magically going to know, but that's not always the case. And sometimes you may have to tell your partner, this is what I need you to do. I need you to, help me with the nighttime feedings. I need you to take the baby on Saturdays so I can go for coffee. It's very important to be clear and share exactly what it is that you need from your partner, and allow your partner to be able to do that with you as well. And that makes for, a lot less turmoil. Okay, so now let's talk about social media, because this is always a huge, huge thing. I love that quote that I heard somewhere that said, may your life be as good as it portrays on Facebook. And social media nowadays, for me, I find it to be a gift and a curse. It's a gift because you're able to reconnect with people that you haven't seen in years. And it's a curse because then you find yourself comparing yourself to those people that you haven't seen in years. So now, especially with the pandemic, a lot of moms are spending more time on social media because it's something to do and it passes time. But it can also hurt because now you find yourself comparing yourself to other people and to other families and to other partners. So how, as women, can we not allow social media to affect us to the extent that it does? What are some tips?
Well, how about first asking yourself the question, how susceptible am I to judgments of myself, judgments of myself in comparison to what I'm reading on social media? Yeah. Because that's a good place to begin. Because if I'm one of those people who's going to do that, and then I'm going to feel guilty or ashamed or humiliated because maybe I'm going to start to get obsessed that I'm worried that I'm not such a good mother. I'm putting my kid in plaids and stripes. What do I know? We're in trouble. And so beware of doom scrolling. Beware of staying online if you're around people you consider to be toxic, or maybe not even toxic, but not exactly the kind that are empathic, who pump you up, who make you feel good, or who give you reassurance that you have just walked into the muddiest waters you're ever going to face in your entire life. It's called raising children, where nothing is always clear. And to be able to tell yourself, it's self-talk, that nobody's keeping track of whether or not my closet is perfectly, my linens are perfectly lined up. Nobody's keeping track. Although there may be some people who are judging you, because there are people in your life who may be judging you. That happens. But if that's true, and it's on social media, you can turn off. If it's, if it's a different form, like you're, again, a family member, maybe I don't need to be seeing them right now, because if they're not part of the solution, if going into social media doesn't make me feel good, it stimulates me because, golly, it's one of those things that I really enjoy, and I used to be in touch with my friends, or however that worked.
Absolutely, yeah.
Then for now, take a break.
I agree. Yeah. I loved what you said, that if going on social media should not have you walk away feeling bad about yourself, or feeling bad about your relationship or your family or your kids or anything like that. And I agree, if you do find that you are scrolling and you're not feeling good about yourself and you're comparing yourself constantly and that's all you're thinking about, then walk away, disconnect your page if you need to, maybe even unfollow certain people that are not making you feel good about yourself. And the other thing I tell my moms too is limit how much time you're going to be on it. Instead of spending an hour on social media, maybe do 15 minutes, but it is such a huge thing. And then what I also find is that with social media, they are looking at their friends' partners and how much they're involved in things with the baby. And then they feel that their partner is not involved. And then that starts a fight between mom and her partner. So how do we prevent that from happening? For mom taking what she's seeing on social media and having it affect her relationship with her partner?
Well, I think, again, you're raising the question of how strong is the obsession to be on social media, and is it helpful or hurtful?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's going to lead to these judgments and comparisons, it's not good for you.
No.
It's not good for your spouse. And research shows too much time doing this isn't good for little babies' brains. You're better off turning it off and being able to sing a song, read a book, anything, just talk to your baby.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, remember this is something that I'm constantly reminding my mamas, is that, with social media, remember what's being posted is only the best picture, the best video, all that kind of stuff. So you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. So you may think that this family and all of them have it all together, but you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. And it's very important to not compare, because that can really get the best of you. Absolutely. So now let's talk a little bit about intimacy, because this is always a huge thing in a relationship. How do you think a couple should reintroduce intimacy right after they have the baby?
So again, I go back to asking a question before I make a statement, and it would be easy to say is, hey, I want it, But maybe before we do that, it's to be able to say, what did we have before we had this baby?
Yeah.
Was sex frequent? Was it exciting? Was it boring? Was it hardly ever? What did we like? What did we not like? There's an old saying about intimacy, and that is that sex is like 98% communication. It's talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to revisit that, sure, your physician may say after your 6-week visit, you can do it, but depending on who you are, you may say, but I'm nursing and it's such a weird feeling being touched and having milk ooze. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Going back to vaginas. I mean, I think somebody stitched it up when they did my episiotomy. I don't think there's a possibility this can happen. So you have to have a tender partner who's going to be able to think about this stuff when we begin to resume sexual intercourse. But before then, there's always the idea of, if it's been on the back burner, and for some people it's months and months since we last had sex, and maybe depending on how I felt before we had this baby, maybe I'm relieved, maybe I'm I don't have much of a libido. Maybe I never, that's the point. Maybe I never had much of a libido. And if that's true, then, what's to think that it's sort of going to want to rev up when I'm more exhausted, more fretful and consumed over making sure that my baby is safe and sound.
Mm-hmm.
So introducing intimacy can just simply be a matter of touching. Can we sit on the couch and watch a 30-minute sitcom? Because most sex actually is about the length of it's no more than a 30-minute sitcom. But maybe we're going to start with the TV show and sitting there and holding hands.
Yeah.
It's like a date. Is that what we got to do? Is like we can't go out, but maybe we can do date night in our own living rooms and do something that feels just like we're changing things up or re-engaging in a way that we used to back before when things were warmer between us, especially if they haven't been. Resuming sex when they've already been warm and we feel loving towards one another. Even if we're afraid of how it's going to feel, we can talk about that so that if something hurts me, something doesn't feel uncomfortable, I'm going to be able to tell my partner.
Exactly.
Having a partner who says, hey, listen, maybe it hasn't been 3 months, depending on what kind of pregnancy you had, depending on whether or not you had a miscarriage or you had infertility. I hear it all the time that perhaps we haven't had sex in 18 months. That's not, that's happened. And he's been patient and he's been good about it. But at this point, he says, to be perfectly frank, going into the shower and taking care of myself just doesn't feel warm and close. What can we do?
Yeah.
That we can re-engage again. And that's really, for some people easy. And for some people, for some couples, it's a larger issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I am a big fan of couples having date nights, and just using it as a way to reconnect, especially when you're parents. But how do you have a date night during the pandemic? How do you keep that going?
I'd love to hear what your ideas are, but my two are how about a picnic in the living room?
I agree. I think that's a great one.
We could bring in food we haven't had in a while, something special that we used to enjoy, and put the tablecloth down on the floor, or however you want to do that. Light the candles, put on the nice music we used to enjoy, watch a movie that we know we'd like together, and do something like that again it re-engages the heat, and that's what you're looking for in the relationship. And sometimes, again, it depends. If you've got a colicky baby, putting that baby in the car, if you know that baby will go to sleep, and taking a drive to one of the places you used to enjoy, and bringing, I'm not telling you to bring alcohol if it's, I don't want you to get in trouble with the police, but but on the other hand, I do think that a couple can do something that, you can bring some snacks and stuff in the car and sit someplace pretty, like, over by the George Washington, by the Hudson River, and just kind of look at pretty scenery, and if especially if the baby's asleep, you've got some time together.
Yeah. And you can even, it's just, what it is? It's just about being creative. Like, some couples work on puzzles together after the baby's asleep. It's just thinking outside of the box of different things that you can do, but it's certainly doable to kind of keep that going during this pandemic. So I have one final question for you. And what I want to know is, what are some recommendations that you could give for a couple that's not together but are co-parenting? What does that dynamic look like, and what are some recommendations that you would advise for them to make this transition and the co-parenting easier?
It starts with a question. And the question is, if I review my relationship, where do we stand? Did we break up amicably, or did we break up with anger and hurt? Because that's going to affect the tenor of how we relate to each other.
Yeah.
And our expectations. Can I expect you to come through for me, or do I expect nothing from you, or barely? I expect you to be a jerk, because my assumptions are going to color how we get along. Mm-hmm. We're also talking about trying to keep the guilt and the anger out of the relationship for the child's sake.
Absolutely.
It goes back to what I said about John Gottman's four horsemen: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Because if that's the way it's going to run, then probably mediation, a therapist, a marriage counselor might be in order. I know you're going to talk about your support groups, but and Postpartum Support International also has groups. They have dads groups. Some dads want no part of you're gonna tell me what to do. But on the other hand, hearing it in the dads groups that other dads may be going through the same thing or have other ideas can be really useful.
Absolutely.
For a guy to kind of normalize what a man is feeling, because he's justified to his feelings as long as the two of you aren't hurting each other, and that's really the goal, isn't it? Is to be able to figure out how to, if splitting up was something that we had to do at this time, how do we make this the best, make the best out of it? And maybe we were never together, but we're going to have to work together for the sake of this child. And absolutely. How again, what are the ways that we do this? And just to kind of think about it, one way of looking at it is to prioritize those goals, basically, and to decide how are we going to divvy up the work, who's going to do what, and to also put down on the list, bite your tongue.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing to remember too when you're co-parenting is your partner may not have been a good partner to you romantically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't going to be a good mother or father. And I think that that's important to keep in the back of your mind as well. Okay, so that's all the questions that I have for you, Linda. So we're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Like I said, please, feel free to write them in the chat box. Okay, so one of the questions that I have is, how do you handle when you and your partner have very different parenting styles? How do you handle that?
So perhaps one of the first things you could do, again, is we go back to productive communication. We go back to, am I being, looking at myself, am I being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn? Am I rigid because my life works smoother? Because if I gave in to, if I look at my own childhood and the way I was raised, if I gave in too much, did I end up feeling like I wasn't a very important person because I had to always give in to a parent or parents because that's the way it was in my house. So by golly, I ain't doing it anymore. I'm not giving an inch. So some of it has to, that's the thing that happens when we have children, isn't it? It really makes us think about how we were raised as children, and how do we want to be as parents? And so to be able to kind of take a look at ourselves and what we need, what we want, is this realistic, or is this something that was, in a sense, kind of the fantasy of how things were going to be that might be different or the same as what we had as children? And so when somebody is taking a rigid position, what would it take to let go?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. What would it take to let go? Absolutely.
Right? I mean, some things are not the small stuff. Some things we have to say, no, I can't. I can't give in on this because, for instance, it has to do with baby's formula, or it has to do with something like that really has to do with, again, safety and risk. But on the other hand, if it's not about safety and risk, what is principle? What is habit? And if we can ask ourselves these questions, or our spouse, maybe we can make some adjustments.
Absolutely. Another question is, how do I approach the conversation when my partner is really pushing for physical intimacy and I'm just not there yet?
It's going back to that communication again. I'm not there yet because I'm afraid, or I'm not sure I'm healed, or because I won't be a good mother if I'm a sexual woman again, or in the case of a man, what do I need, so that I can feel like I'm loved? Because let's face it, when that baby comes, I'm pushed down the ladder. It's a sad but true fact. If I was top dog,
not anymore. It's a huge transition for your partner, and then and sometimes what happens is our partners tend to take it personally when we don't want to, when we're not at that place where we're ready for that physical intimacy. I have seen that too. Yeah,
it is worth talking to an OBGYN or a counselor if needed. I'm sure in support group, sometimes those are conversations that we can have. That kind of open up the conversation, or ways to talk about it.
Absolutely. And sometimes it just may be mom sharing with her partner where she's at in terms of the physical intimacy and why she's feeling the way that she's feeling. Maybe her partner has no idea and is taking it that, oh, she doesn't find me attractive anymore. So again, communication is such a key component. And then just one more question for you. So it drives me crazy when my partner says, I do nothing all day and he works, and when he comes home, he's tired and doesn't want to help with the baby. It makes me feel lazy. How do I address this with my partner?
Lazy is such a loaded term.
Oh, yeah.
Because anybody who has spent a whole day, let's just say 8 hours, any 8 hours with a baby knows lazy doesn't, there's no way that lazy fits in there. Different way of spending our time, for sure. And nobody can have an idea of what that really feels like until they've done that time. The flip side of that may be that you are a mom who isn't prepared yet to go out and say, and again, before pandemic, I'm sorry, that really wasn't supposed to happen. My apologies, but I thought I had turned it off. But anyway, the point here is that you have to be able to say, look, how can we, prioritize? How can we figure out who's going to do what? How do we divvy up the work, even if it's an imperfect system, because moms always do a little bit more. We're hardwired that way, mostly.
Yeah.
It's in the genes. And also to be able to say, this I can let go of, I can bite my tongue and say nothing. This I don't fight over.
And for me, one of the things that I always say to my moms that I advise is, why don't you leave the baby with your partner one day, all day, and let's see how your partner responds to that. I have a feeling they'll be looking at what you do very differently. So Linda, thank you so much for being here with us today and taking time and answering our questions. And, this was just so wonderful, and I just enjoy our chats. So I just want to end really quickly, just talking a little bit about our perinatal mood disorders program. And if you then want to mention a little bit about Postpartum Support International, that would be great. So our perinatal mood disorders program that we have going on at the partnership is broken down into 4 major components. The first one is we do provide a lot of professional and consumer education. So in terms of professional education, we go out, we educate hospitals, we educate staff of different agencies on the different types of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And we do the same thing with consumer education in terms of like virtual health fairs, which we actually do have one that's going to be coming up on March 4th. It's called Healthy Mind, Healthy Mom. So you can definitely check out that event on our website, which I will mention again at the end. And we do a lot of just presentations on self-care, the different types of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders for moms as well. We do run virtual support groups. There are virtual support groups that run at various times for new moms on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And there is a Spanish-speaking virtual support group that meets Wednesday mornings. And then there's a pregnancy support group that meets on Friday mornings. All are free. You can register for however many you want. And then the third piece of what we do is our emotional health phone support program. So if anyone is at risk or is just not doing well emotionally, you can certainly reach out to us. And our role is to get you connected to mental health services or support groups that are available in the area that you live in. So that's definitely something, if any of you out there are interested in, you can certainly reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to connect you with a perinatal mental health coordinator that would be able to get you connected. And then last but not least, we do a lot of community events. Right now, a lot of the events that we're having are virtual. However, we're hoping once it gets a little bit warmer, we'll be able to do some stuff outside. But all of these programs that we offer all can be found on the partnership website. So once again, it's www.partnershipmch.org. And there you can find all of the virtual upcoming events like the health fair that's taking place on March 4th. And you can also find all of the information for the virtual support groups that we have going on. Linda, do you want to talk a little bit about Postpartum Support International?
Well, sure. My passion, along with the partnership, and that is www.postpartum.net. We also have something besides support group, different varieties of support groups. We have something on Wednesdays called Chat with an Expert. We have dad support groups. And for professionals, we have all sorts of trainings. And right now, June 26th is going to be a fundraiser and we're looking for leaders here in New Jersey. It's it's going to be virtual, a fundraiser called Climb Out of the Darkness. And it was begun a couple of years ago. And really, it's it's a really fun thing. It used to be where moms would just put their kids in strollers and just take a walk and raise money. But right now the stroller is kind of hard to do outside still, but it's being done virtually, and it's a wonderful fundraiser. And if you're interested in learning more and would like to be a mom who can participate, go to postpartum.net, or just reach out to me, and I'm happy to give you information. Thank you, Evie.
Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. So again, make sure to check out the partnership's website, www.partnershipmch.org, to find out about upcoming events that we have going on virtually, as well as our virtual support groups for pregnant and new moms. And just a reminder that a recording of this program will be available on the partnership's YouTube page, so you can go ahead and rewatch it or send it along to any of your friends that you feel could benefit from this information. So Linda, once again, I thank you for being with me for the last hour, and have a great day, everybody.